You built your identity on a belief that feels safe. You think change is earned through drama, pain, or time. You think the self is a fixed core that reforms only after shock. You wait for a crisis to force a rewrite. Or you try to talk yourself into a new life through will and slogans. That is the belief. It feels moral. It feels fair. It is also the reason you keep orbiting the same problems with better vocabulary. The brain does not protect a sacred self. It protects predictions. It wants to reduce surprise. Identity is not a soul. It is the most efficient story your nervous system can tell to keep your actions predictable to you. That is why you defend habits that hurt you. They reduce uncertainty. Your brain pays with outcomes to buy down doubt. Neuroscience is blunt on this point. Carl Friston's predictive coding describes the brain as a model builder. It guesses what will happen, then updates when the guess is wrong. Identity sits inside that model as a shortcut. I am this kind of person helps the system conserve energy. That shortcut updates not when you suffer, but when your predictions about yourself keep failing in controlled ways. Low threat, high precision, repeated. That is the uncomfortable truth. You do not need trauma to change. You need better prediction errors. There are 7 reliable openings in the system. They are not dramatic. They are not mystical. They are loopholes in how the brain organizes experience. People miss them because they prefer intensity to accuracy. They chase catharsis. They ignore the quiet mechanics that actually flip switches. The first opening is the prediction error window. Your cortex anticipates what you will do, feel, and think in a given context. When you behave slightly outside that expectation and nothing bad happens, the model has to update. The anterior cingulate flags the mismatch. Dopamine neurons register a small positive error. The model shifts a fraction. Do that repeatedly, and the old identity stops being the safest bet. The key is small, consistent violations that the system cannot ignore, not huge swings that trigger threat responses. Most people think identity changes when you go all in. The brain is more conservative. It trusts stability. It updates to patterns that make better predictions. You either work with that, or you keep trying to outshout your own biology. The second opening is the reconsolidation window. Memory is not a file cabinet. It is an active process. When you recall a memory, it becomes malleable for a short period before it restabilizes. Karim Nader and Joseph Ledoux showed this in emotional memory research. If the memory reactivates and the emotional outcome changes, the trace updates. This is not magic. It is resource allocation. The brain corrects old maps based on new contingencies. Identity rests on autobiographical memory. If the emotional tone attached to key episodes shifts, the who I am narrative shifts. Not by erasing history, but by altering what your nervous system expects from that history. No catastrophe required. Only precise pairing of activation and new meaning. People romanticize breakthroughs. The brain prefers small, decisive edits while the file is open. The third opening is state gating. You are not oneself. You are a set of cells gated by physiological state. Stephen Porges described how the autonomic nervous system changes your options. When your arousal is high and threat is salient, your brain recruits survival patterns. When your arousal is steady and signals of safety are present, your cortex has more range. The default mode network that narrates identity quiets a little. The salience network shifts what you notice. Under one state, you reach for old roles. Under another, you can access different choices. Most people try to change identity while living in a state that confirms the old one. They demand rational control while their body reads the world as hostile. Stoics understood this without language for vagal tone. Epictetus taught that impressions are not facts and that control begins with what you admit into judgment. Adjust the state and the self you can access changes. Quietly, no drama. More options appear because your circuits allow them. The fourth opening is habit scaffolding. The basal ganglia chunk repeated sequences into automatic routines. And Graybill's work showed how the brain compresses a behavior chain into a single unit, identity, and learns to explain that unit. You become the type of person who does what your scaffolding makes easy. Most people argue with labels. The brain cares about friction. It selects the path of lower cost under current cues. If an action is one effortless step from your present position, it is more likely to occur. If it is 7 steps, it is unlikely. Identity learns from what occurs. You can stand for hours debating whether you are a disciplined person. Your basal ganglia answer with what is easiest to start and finish under the conditions you live in. Moral talk does not override that. Design the chain that the brain wants to run, then let explanation follow behavior. William James put it simply, the path to a new belief often runs through the act. The 5th opening is the interpreter effect. Michael Gatzzaniga described how the left hemisphere invents coherent stories to explain actions that originated elsewhere. We hate admitting this. We insist on authorship. Yet the interpreter is pragmatic, not holy. It retrofits causes that protect continuity. That reflex can be your enemy when it excuses stagnation. It can also be your ally. If you place undeniable evidence of a new pattern in front of the interpreter, it updates the story. It will insist that the new act reflects who you are, because it has to reduce dissonance. Daryl Bem's self-perception theory says we infer attitudes by observing our own behavior when internal cues are weak. That extends to identity. You can argue with a label for years. Or you can create an obvious contrast that forces the interpreter to concede. It will not congratulate you. It will make it look inevitable, which is fine. You want inevitability. You want the story to backfill in your favor. The 6th opening is the social mirror. Your brain calibrates identity by reading how others respond to you. Charles Cooley called it the looking glass self. We construct who we are based on the reflected appraisals we perceive. Social baseline theory shows that the presence of supportive others reduces perceived effort and threat. In practice, that means proximity to people who treat your new identity as normal will make it biologically cheaper to maintain. This is not motivational fluff. It is energy math. Your amygdala and insula scan for social cues. Your prefrontal cortex borrows stability from the group. If your environment handles your new pattern as standard, your system predicts less cost. Identity aligns. The opposite is also true. If your context treats your change as a betrayal, your brain correctly predicts higher cost. You will rationalize retreat as realism. Machiavelli wrote that appearances matter more than intentions in public life. He was not advising deception without limits. He was describing a law of perception. People treat you as what they see repeatedly. Your nervous system then optimizes for that treatment. Decide if you accept that or if you keep fighting physics with pride. The 7th opening is reward prediction. Wolfram Schultz's studies on dopamine show how the brain learns what to value. Dopamine fires not at reward itself, but at the prediction of reward and the error between expected and received results. Tie a pattern to meaningful reward signals, and your system will allocate more attention and effort to it. Tie it to stale or negative signals, and it will devalue it. Identity rides these valuations. If you can make small, clear wins legible to your reward system, the pattern becomes sticky. If you bury wins in self-critique, the pattern looks costly. This is not about praise. It is about aligning value representation with the person you claim to be. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are." Many hear poetry. The nervous system hears a protocol. Make the actions of that person feel like gains to the organism. The organism will pursue them because it believes they reduce future surprise and increase control. These 7 are not hacks in the cheap sense. They are levers that exist whether you use them or not. Most people ignore them because they prefer narratives that make suffering the price of admission. It keeps them safe from responsibility. If change requires catastrophe, you are justified in waiting. If change requires precision, you have to act without applause. Let us cut deeper. You do not have a self that stands outside of your nervous system, choosing identities like outfits. You have a system that generates the feeling of a self by stitching together perception, memory, and expectation. Antonio Damasio called those somatic markers. Emotions tag options with bodily signals. Those tags are then read as values. You call the sum of that reading your character. That is why you defend it. It feels like survival. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the quality of your mind depends on the quality of your thoughts. Translated into modern terms, the quality of your identity depends on the quality of your predictions and the evidence you allow into the model. Here is the contrast you are refusing to acknowledge. There are people who treat identity as a shrine. They protect it with therapy words and social cred. They police any discomfort as harm. They wait for the big moment that makes change inevitable. They will get plenty of moments. Most will be wasted. Then there are people who treat identity as a tool. They adjust inputs. They respect constraints. They build evidence. They do not announce it. They let the brain do what it does when its own math lines up. No confessional required, no spectacle. Just a quiet pivot that looks obvious in hindsight. This is not cold. It is honest. The world rewards coherence, not confession. You can be coherent in service of what matters to you. Stoics would call that living according to nature. Not the trees, the nature of your faculties. What is in your control is how you manage your attention, your judgments, and the conditions that teach your brain what to expect from you. What is not in your control is whether other people romanticize your suffering. Stop bargaining with that. You may want to ask for steps. That is the reflex. Tell me exactly what to do. That would miss the point. Tactics change with context. The principles do not. Precision beats drama. Predictions update through consistent evidence. States gate options. Habits decide friction. The interpreter defends continuity until you force it to defend you. The social mirror multiplies cost or reduces it. Dopamine trains value, not virtue. If you absorb that, you can improvise inside your life without waiting for permission. You may also want to fight this. You will say that pain built you. Perhaps pain built your caution. It did not build your agency. Agency comes from closing the gap between what you think you are and what your system proves. Trauma is not a rite of passage. It is a tax. Pay only what you owe. Stop treating the tax as a medal. Notice what this removes. Excuses that hide behind identity labels. I am just not that kind of person. You can keep that sentence if you want. The brain will honor it by filtering out evidence to the contrary. Or you can test it under new conditions and force an update. Sartre said existence precedes essence. That means you build who you are after you are here, not before. People use that line to justify anything. Use it to justify accuracy. Be ruthless about what is actually happening in your nervous system. Replace slogans with signals. Here is where most people fail. They demand a guarantee that the new identity will be embraced. You will not get it. You are changing a prediction machine. It will resist, then comply, then pretend it always believed. Others will do the same. That is human. Do not take it personally. Use it. The less you broadcast your edits, the less social error you create. The model updates faster without noise. Another failure pattern. People try to switch values to match trends. That leads to inner bankruptcy. The loopholes work in service of chosen ends. If you lie to yourself about what you value, you train a split. The interpreter gets clever. The dopamine system becomes cynical. The social mirror reflects confusion. You end up with a self that performs competence and feels hollow. Choose targets you can respect, then optimize hard. Machiavelli observed that men judge by the eye, not the hand. The hand still matters. Results stabilize image. Without results, you chase optics. With results, optics follow. History favors those who understand hidden structure. In war, in markets, in personal life, the winners do not announce. They build leverage quietly. They act when the cost is lowest. They do not need permission because their model of reality is clean. They see what most miss because they are not seduced by stories that comfort the crowd. This is one of those structures. Identity is a control system. It answers to evidence. Feed it evidence that supports the person you insist on becoming. Withdraw evidence that contradicts it. If that sentence feels dry, good. Dry processes work. You might wonder why this knowledge is not everywhere. It is. In pieces, in labs, in philosophy books, in biographies of people who rebuilt themselves without theater. What is rare is the will to use it. There is no external medal for changing quietly. You have to be content with outcomes. That disqualifies most. They prefer recognition over mastery. They keep their problems because their problems buy them attention. That is a trade. Decide if it is yours. If you are still here, you are probably done with theater. You want to feel ownership, not adrenaline. Good. Here is what you hold. A map of 7 openings that let the brain accept a new identity without violence. Prediction errors that are small and consistent. Memory that edits when reactivated. States that change the menu of cells. Habits that lower friction. An interpreter that rewrites the story after the act. A social mirror that sets the price of change. A reward system that trains what to pursue. None of that is mystical. All of it is usable. This channel is not for people who need spectacle. It is for people who can tolerate the quiet. If you can handle that, stay close. The next conversations will go deeper into each lever. Not tips, not tricks. Structure, what to notice, what to ignore. How to remove dead weight from your system so it stops dragging you back to the person you were 12 months ago. If that sounds like work, it is. If it sounds like freedom, you are in the right place. The door is narrow. Most will not fit. They are attached to an audience. They are addicted to a story about themselves that costs too much to maintain. You can step through if you want. You will not get applause inside. You will get something better. A life that stops arguing with its own predictions. Choose which side you stand on. Shrine or tool. Drama or leverage. You do not need to announce it. You only need to make it true enough that your own brain cannot deny it. Once that happens, the rest of your identity will adjust to look consistent. It will tell you a story about how you were always like this. Smile and let it. The result is what matters. The minority who understand this will treat identity as a living system. They will move with precision. They will not wait for crisis. They will build their own evidence and let meaning catch up. If you are one of them, commit now. Not to a performance, to a method. The room is quiet for a reason. Only people doing the work stay.